Hello and welcome to Author Nation. I am Melody Ann, your host, and Author Nation takes you from idea to published book so you do not get stuck and you do not get overwhelmed and you do not make those costly mistakes that can happen. So if you're just starting out, grab our planning checklist for nonfiction authors. The link is scrolling past you right now, and it is also in the description, and that would be authornation.online. Today, we are talking to Nikki Green about her book, I Laugh in the Face of Danger, and the lessons she learned along the way. Nikki Green left the tech world to inspire the next generation to do things differently. She partners with graduating college students to create a syllabus for life designed to help them pursue their passions rather than just a paycheck. Through her book, I Laugh in the Face of Danger, her weekly podcast, Stand Up and Stand Out, she coaches the chameleon mindset, teaching her audience how to adapt to their ever-changing environment. Please welcome Nikki Green. Hi, Nikki. How are you today?
Hi, everybody. Great to see you. Thanks for having me on.
Yes, absolutely. I love it. Okay, so I love this idea of syllabus for life. When I was reading when I was looking at your bio, I'm like, syllabus for life. Okay, this isn't just for graduating college students. This is for everyone. We all need a syllabus for life. Can you just talk a little bit about what a syllabus for life is?
Yeah, and I'm actually going to be expanding on this and building out some curriculum because this is exactly what happened. I really started focusing on college students, but especially with the pandemic, many people kind of felt lost and they said, "Hey, can I get in on this?" And I said, "Sure, the more the merrier." I think it's really great to continue evaluating, where life takes its turns, whether that's personally or professionally. And so the syllabus really allows you to think about your major milestones that you want to hit. Maybe that's something as simple as getting a dog, right? But what are the things you want in life? And how do you work towards that goal so that you feel some accomplishment? And it's not just about money and cars and material things, but really about having a holistic view of your life and having paths towards it. So.
Nice. I love that. And I've heard it, I've thought about having a curriculum, like building my own curriculum, and it's the same idea. And I love that. But don't talk to me about getting dogs. I want a dog so much. I just have the wrong lifestyle for a dog. So I just, and I'm not going to work towards a different lifestyle. So I just have to let that one go. All right. Let's talk about your book. I Laugh in the Face of Danger. I mean, it sounds like famous last words in some way, doesn't it? It's like, where did that title come from?
Well, it probably depends on your age if you'll know which reference. So there's actually two references that made this line famous. The first one is from The Lion King. So if you've watched the Disney film, you'll see that Simba says, "I laugh in the face of danger." And obviously, being a big Disney fan, that was one for me. But I was also a huge Buffy the Vampire Slayer fan of the TV show in the 90s. And so there's also an episode where that gets referenced in there. And it just really felt like the right thing when I was brainstorming title ideas. I came up with lots of other things, but that one just resonated. One, because of sort of the Easter egg of what it really is from, but also just sort of the journey of my life. So
I love the title. I feel like there are many of us who live by that, right? It's like something, it's a motto to live by. So where did the idea for the memoir itself come from?
When I had my corporate job, I used to travel a lot. Every 1 to 2 weeks out of a month, I was on a plane somewhere. Sometimes it was to places here domestically in the United States, like Omaha, Austin, and sometimes it was all the way across to London, Paris, or Singapore, going the other direction. And so a lot of times I was stuck in airports and I just did not want to read another email. And so I read and I wrote and I read and I wrote and I wrote a lot of stories about my life and thought about what things were kind of important. But when I quit my job, I got a career coach, and that was one of the first things he said: sit down and write. And so I just picked up that same pen and notebook and reflected on some of the stories I had already written and started writing new ones. And it was a great time to reflect. It was the middle of the pandemic, not a lot else to do. So I just really got out and started being creative.
Oh, that's great. I love that story. And who is the ideal reader for your memoir? Who are you really speaking to?
Yeah, it's funny because a lot of different people have said that the book resonates with them, and so that's been really fun. I geared it towards young people so that you understand that no matter what the challenges are that you see when you're younger, there's still so many things you can accomplish in life, and that you are learning a lesson through those things. But even, people my own age, people more my parents' age, they've read the book and they've also gotten lessons from it too, where they had similar experiences in life and now got to see them in a new light. So,
Nice. So it sounds like it can really speak to across the board. What are some of the themes in the book and some of the kind of the lessons that come through those themes?
yeah, so I had 6 parents, which is a very different way to start out life. And it meant moving and changing a lot. And so that really became a foundation of adaptation for me. And so the theme really is about no matter what's happening to you, there is a way to look at it in a more positive light, just like the title says, to really laugh in the face of danger. Now, sometimes this was actual danger because I didn't do the brightest things sometimes. And sometimes it was ending up in dangerous situations that I didn't expect. And how did I recover from that? So it's a balance of kind of both of those things, but really how to make sure that no matter how you end up in that situation, you learn and move forward.
Yeah, and I think that, and interestingly enough, 6 parents. So were you did you have, like, this weekend you were here and this weekend you were there and that week you were here? Did you move around a lot? Because you would really have to be a chameleon because the rules change, the personalities change, the food changes, the bedroom changes, right? And so
Yeah,
is that what you mean? I just want to dig into this idea of chameleon a little bit, if you don't mind.
no, that's fantastic. And a lot of people have, separate lifestyles now with parents separating, divorcing, or, maybe living with a grandparent or an aunt and uncle. A lot of people become the community of your family. And so with my 6 parents, we originally lived in Reno, Nevada, and then my mom met my stepdad and we moved to Northern California. And then at the time, my biological father was actually living in Colorado. So we were all in very different places. So in some ways, that was really good for me because I got to see some very unique and different lifestyles and be exposed to different environments. And I didn't really do the shuttling back and forth like a lot of kids do today, where you're in the same neighborhood and it's like on Wednesday you're here and on Thursday you're there, which is sometimes difficult. I really had like, oh, summer break, you're here, winter break, you're over there. Here you're going to have snow. Here you're going to go to the desert, right? And so it really made a great environment and gave me a bit more consistency during the year when I was going to school. So.
Right, right. So in some ways you were the new kid over and over, and in some ways you were the part-time friend to, the neighborhood kids, right? So I can imagine how what we call FOMO now, right? I'm only there for summer break, and what did I miss out? I can imagine how you would need to kind of adapt constantly to that as well. So if this book is for young people, what is the promise you're making to them?
That it's gonna be okay, and that one of the most important lessons that I missed is I didn't ask for help. I didn't really ask for help in the times that I needed it, and I know a lot of people are struggling after the pandemic, young and not so young or young at heart, and we're kind of keeping it inside because we were told to stay inside for so long, and we were told, to almost be afraid of each other. And instead of coming out quite so feral, I really want people to open up and be a part of a community. It will be okay, but you don't have to do it alone. And I think for me, that's the biggest message to people, is that bringing people back together so that we can actually help each other through our struggles, and share vulnerably things that we've gone through and how we got, to the next piece. So.
Yeah. I think that was probably one of the biggest lessons of my entire life, right? Stop trying to do it alone, build
Mhm.
community. I think that was probably one of the biggest lessons I've ever learned on my road to success. So, well done. Um,
Thank you.
so finish this sentence. Because of my book, what has happened in your life or career?
Oh, wow. Yeah. Because of my book, my entire life changed pretty much, including my name. So There's pretty much nothing about my life. So I was living in California. Now I live in outside of Chicago in Illinois. I was married. Now I'm not. Now I live with my boyfriend here. I was working a corporate job. Now I own my own business. Yeah, so any part of the amount of change you could do in, a year or 2 years time span has happened to me, but that's part of the laughing in the face of danger too. It is being that chameleon, adapting to that change, and finding, okay, now what? How do I survive this? How do I, again, come together with people to make sure that I'm stronger when I come out of some of these difficult times? So yeah, there really isn't something that didn't happen pretty much during that time.
Yeah. And if you think about it, when marriages end, friendships change completely. And when you move from city to city, friendships change completely, right? And when you have a new partner, friendships change completely. So you can think about throwing that all together on one bucket at the same time and mixing it up, right? That's quite a that's quite a potent cocktail. Let's just call it that.
Yeah, and the book was a little bit of therapy, I think, too, of, just writing and processing some of those things, and just finding some new creativity within myself, right? And remembering when I did well, and getting back to those memories of it wasn't all doom and gloom, right? That there are many good times that have happened, and we'll all figure it out together, right? And keep talking and communicating. So
Yeah. That's excellent. Thank you. If you're watching on the live stream, don't forget, you can ask questions, you can leave comments. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're watching on the replay, keep watching. There is so much more to come. All right, Nikki, I want to turn our attention to the process of writing books, the lessons you've learned, and the lessons you bring to college students as well that you can apply for authors, because I think there's a lot of crossover there. Let's start with, did you just diligently sit down every day and pump out 1,000 words?
yes, I made that mistake.
Okay.
So when I first sat down, because I wasn't intending to write a book, I really was just writing and writing and writing. And, then I would be exhausted. One, because some of the stories were traumatic. So I was reliving a bit of it, a little too much in the details. And so I wrote a lot, but then the next day I'd be exhausted. And so what I ended up doing is I found NaNoWriMo, which is the National Novel Writing Month, what happens every November.
Yeah.
And then I started connecting with other authors, again, finding a community for something that was brand new to me. And then I started learning about, more like a Pomodoro method and timing, how long you write and taking a break in between things. And so once I figured that out, the pacing got a lot better, and the writing hopefully did too.
Yeah. And did you only write, or did you write without writing in any way?
Yeah, so mostly I wrote. I really liked writing on paper and pen. I like, again, because it was the pandemic, there was only so much to do, and since I didn't have to sit here and stare at the camera all day, I thought, hey, let's go someplace. So I went to one of the great authors here in Chicago. She recommended this process called refilling the well, which is where you go to a location and you get inspired by art or nature or all sorts of things. And so I actually did that process a lot, and I took my book with me. Sometimes I narrated, audibly into my phone. Sometimes I actually wrote down as I was sitting still. So just depended on what I was doing. But yeah, I tried to get off the computer as much as I could during the process.
And that's great. I mean, getting into new scenery is really, really helpful, right? I try to get out into nature as much as I can, because that's, that fills the well, so to speak, for me, right? And that's great. So you did a lot of, when you first started writing, were you saying, okay, I'm going to write a book now? Or were you writing and at some point you're like, wait a minute, I have a book now?
Yeah, when I started my business, I said, oh, I really want to get back to motivational speaking. I've done a lot of public speaking. I've been doing it since I was about 12 years old. I come from a family of performers, so we were always sort of on the stage. And so that was my main goal. But at the time, it was lockdown. And so the stage was this, it was sitting here in front of the camera. And so that was quite difficult. And so then I started connecting with other speakers, again, community. And they said, the best way is to have a book, so you have a platform so that people can read and learn a little bit more about you. And then also you can sell it or give it away at events as you have things. And so then those stories were formed into a book and started to become the platform for my speaking topics. So.
And so did your writing shift when you're like, okay, I got it, I'm writing a book? What shifted for you in maybe how you wrote or how you planned, or what were the shifts after that decision?
Yeah, when I first started writing, there wasn't really a goal, and I didn't know that other people were going to read it. It was more for my personal kind of processing. And then when it started to become a book, it was different because now I said, oh, well, now it has to have a purpose. And I knew the end goal is also to have a talk about it. Like, what's the lesson I'm trying to teach people? And so then even the stories I had already written, I went back and really crafted to make sure what's the timeline? Am I going to tell these in chronological order? What does need to come out of here? And what's the sequence? Can I lead from one story kind of to the next throughout? So yeah, it was a fun journey once I started made that mental pivot. And then I created completely different stories, I think, with a more kind of wrapper around it, like an actual author.
Yeah. And so did that help your focus, or did it become more difficult to focus?
In the beginning, it was good because then I really started to hone it. And that was right about the time that NaNoWriMo happened as well. So then I was connecting with other authors. I had more people to sort of read my stuff and give feedback, and got a lot more structure and training throughout that month. It was amazing and it really helped transform. I think then it started getting difficult because after November ended, then I had to figure it out by myself. And then I got into editing, and I wasn't a fan of editing as much as I was of writing.
Yeah. So it was so when you were losing focus, how did you kind of bring yourself back? Because I know that can be a real challenge for authors.
Yeah, I just started writing other things too. So sometimes if I couldn't quite figure out what I needed to do for the book, I was also doing tons of things for my business. So I would go write some social media posts or go write a blog about some popular topic. I would work on curriculum for, my coaching clients. Started thinking about doing the podcast, which was something I hadn't thought of before. So I didn't have to write solely about the book. Sometimes it was just about getting in the exercise of being able to get up and write every day, even if it was about, maybe a parallel topic or something, else that I needed to do for the business. So.
Yeah, yeah. And so it was a memoir. Did you do research for your memoir?
A little bit because I wanted to go back to like some of those times and think about, what was going on economically, what was going on, kind of pop culturally, what was sort of the influence that I was experiencing during those times. So, yeah, I did a little bit of research. Some of it was fun too. I really love music. And so I got back into the music of certain times in my life and had really, sometimes really good and strong memories about the things that were happening. And so I included some of those footnotes with a Spotify playlist there.
And that's a really good point. I just want to highlight that because that's a really good point. When you're writing a memoir, a lot of people say, I don't do research because I know what happened. But the truth is, if you go back and you look at the newspaper headlines and you read, what happened during that time, and especially things like music, which you listen to an old song. I can listen to an old song I listened to when I was 13, and all of a sudden I get these rush of memories and emotions, and it can be really helpful in writing a memoir to go back and do that kind of research. Did you find that?
Well, and especially if you're trying to appeal to a global audience. Throughout my travels, I've really been exposed to lots of different cultures. I speak four languages. And so some of the things too is making sure if you're trying to appeal to other readers, they may not have had your same experience. Even from Canada to the US, we're not the same, and so there are lots of different things that are happening that may just be out of context for them. Sometimes music and movies and some of those things might be more transcendent because they're more global, but it could be something that happened very specific to you in your neighborhood or where you were living. And so I think giving people a little bit more context helps them understand and maybe relate to your story. So.
Yeah, yeah. I have to ask, did you go back and watch Buffy?
I did. I did. I have a couple of like really favorite episodes. Um, some episodes that I remember just really making me super happy, and some that, were really sad, like Strangely the Musical episode. So, but yeah, always been kind of a Joss Whedon fan. I'm sort of a pop culture nerd anyways, my whole
Yeah.
family is. So, yeah, going back to some of that stuff was definitely a good time transport during the winter here in Chicago.
Yeah, and I mean, and fun, right? How to make doing your writing your memoir fun, right? Digging into things like that can get you to explore, that time in your life, and also just kind of nostalgia and revisit it. And there can be, as you said, trauma, but there can also be where you find the positive pieces, right? The things that brought you joy and helped you get through it, right? So I think that's beautiful. So tell me what you did with all this research. How did you track it? How did you collect your thoughts? How did all this happen?
Yeah. So before changing my entire life, I used to work in tech. I used to live and work in Silicon Valley for the last 20 years, working at probably some of the big companies you guys all know about. Although I worked in finance, I was fortunate to work at Microsoft for a couple of years back in my hometown in Reno. And so it was as they were transitioning into Windows 8, and we were really going to like full digital cloud and all those types of things. And so one of the things they told us is no more paper notebooks in the office and no more printers. And so they said, we are going to be all in on digital. And that meant using their software, OneNote. And so I thought, oh, I don't know. I really love my notebook. I love taking it to meetings and writing stuff down. But I thought, okay, well, they're literally taking all the paper notebooks away. So I guess I better figure out how to use this. But with the use of that plus cloud, it's been really fantastic, not only previously in my corporate jobs, but now with my business and even with my home life to, track the grocery shopping and chores that need to be done. You can share it with other people. You can easily search. You can make a notebook with tabs just like you would in a paper one. And it has really elevated my ability to do research even on the fly because it connects to my phone. And so if I happen to be just reading an article or see something on social media, tap the link, go put it in there, and then I can go watch it later. And it's all compiled in one cute little place. So
Wow. So how does OneNote work?
So OneNote is luckily a free part of the software, so you can download it without having the full suite. Obviously, as you upgrade and you have other Microsoft products, it can connect to things. But even if you aren't on Microsoft, you can use Zapier and some of the other links so that you can do API calls and actually make actions out of your notebook into it. But it works pretty seamlessly. If you copy a link, let's say from this wonderful YouTube, then you'll also see a preview of it. So if you forget what that link is actually for, it'll actually give you a little preview and kind of watch it in the player. So it's pretty seamless. And I am actually in the middle of building a little mini course for it. So maybe we'll share it with the listeners later on.
Yes, that would be great. And so for OneNote, is it just like a big list or there's sections, or how is it broken down?
Yeah, so I know there's other ones out there like Evernote, and I know Google has their own. And some of those are just sort of post-it based, and it's like a quick note, and maybe you can color code them. This actually looks like a notebook. So across the top, you'll have tabs in your individual notebook, and within that, on the right-hand side, you'll have pages. And then you can create multiple notebooks. So I have one notebook just for podcasting, and one tab is shows I'm going to be on, and the other tab is people that want to be on my show. And that way, as I meet and greet with people and I get their bios, everything's all in one place. Same thing with writing my book or working on my blog or, any of the other 500 other projects I keep picking up. You can switch between your notebooks very seamlessly, and you can search to find it. So you don't have to remember exactly how you organized it. And if you collaborate with other people, they don't have to be in your head either. They can do the same thing. They can search and then find what works for them.
So we have a menu item, and it's like having a stack of notebooks that you can pull out the right notebook when you need it. When you open the notebook, is it all just one long list, or can you know how in notebooks you can section them off? Can you section things off in OneNote, or is it just all one big thing?
Yeah, you can section them and color code, which is my favorite. So so you can color code the tabs, so some are more visible, you can even move them around, something you definitely can't do with a physical notebook, and so if something becomes more priority, then you can move it closer to the left-hand side so that you're grabbing it right away, and then if you end up with too many tabs in that notebook, it just stacks them up, and then you can reorganize or grab them, as you're looking for something. So it's pretty self-explanatory, and you can also open and expand some of the menus so that if you want more writing space, there's things that'll quickly make lists. You can have ruled paper. You can even do mathematical formulas and more complex stuff with it.
Wow.
So there's a lot of pre-formulated templates that are in there as well.
Yeah. And I'm assuming you can search as well, which
Yeah, you can search all sorts of things in there, and it does it pretty fast, and it'll give you, oh, this is not just the name of the page, but exactly where it as is in the document, and it'll highlight the word for you, so
yeah.
it's easy to find.
And I asked that because it sounds really organized, right? Here are my stack of notebooks, and I can grab the right notebook, and that notebook is sectioned off, and I can move the pages around depending on what my priorities are. But at the same time, I don't know about you, but I have 5 million projects going on, so I have 5 million notebooks, and it's really easy to lose track of things. And sometimes I just can't find, where did I write that down? It was really good. I don't know if you've ever done that.
Yes.
Taking a couple of keywords and throwing them into a search and having it pulled up where it is really helpful.
Yeah, and a lot of times I even have here, I always have Post-its on the desk, writing
Yes.
thousands of notes of like, oh, I just need to quickly do this. It also has a Post-it function. So I know some people like that about some of the other options. So you can even just do quick Post-its if it's just like, oh, I just remember I need to buy some milk at the grocery store, on top of having the full notebook capability. So you get kind of the best of both worlds.
Nice. And it's huge and it's powerful, but you also said it's very intuitive. So it's very visual. Is that
Yeah, I think that's one of the best things too is, I mean, if you've used Word, if you use Excel or any kind of similar products, it works pretty much the same way. And so it doesn't take this huge learning curve that all of a sudden buttons and things are in different places and you can't find the menu bar. So once you get to use one of those, then it's fairly similar. It has its own obviously unique attributes, which are actually honestly better than some of the other products. So for me, it's always been a winner, and they're always releasing new stuff, especially for schools and universities and things to be using for classes that teachers can actually put, their syllabus and more information for classes in there. So notes are already kind of pre-populated, and you can start from, something rather than a blank page.
That's amazing. I love this idea. So when you decided you were going to write a book, you opened a notebook in OneNote. How did you, because you were saying earlier, you had all these stories, you had to figure out what stories you were going to use and what order they were going to be in, and you were doing all this research. How did you organize yourself?
So in the beginning, I thought, oh, this is going to be a very serious career book about career things. And so the sections I started were, stories about my career and how I became so amazing at what I was doing. But as I started digging into those stories, I started realizing that for all of us, there's a reason we're doing what we're doing. And it goes back to something that happened before. And so it would lead me down the rabbit hole a bit to go back in time as to question myself, well, why did I do it this way? Or why did I struggle with this at that time? What else was going on? And so the nice thing is that as you have a section, you can also make sub pages under it. So if maybe like, here's the core story, but here's some other research I need to do so that I can go back and fill it into the story. It gives you a great way to kind of put that all around. And then if you go, oh, this actually goes with something totally in a different section, drag, drop. You can even just copy it. If you don't want to lose it in that place, you can have the same thing in 2 different places and use it for more than one reference.
So did you organize your memoir? Did you start out kind of organizing it by themes or by subject matter or by stories? And then did you go do research and throw them into the sections? Like how would you advise if somebody out there is going to start a memoir and how would you suggest they just get started with organizing all, because you have these journals and photographs and, how would you suggest they kind of get started in that?
Yeah, and NaNoWriMo, one of the things they talk about is, are you a pantser or are you a plotter? Are you someone that goes by the seat of your pants as you're writing, or are you someone that needs to be very methodical and plot everything out? I'm very much a pantser, so again, it's going to depend on your writing style. For those that are plotters, you would probably really start with a strict, outline of what you were doing before you really started writing anything. You'd spend probably almost a whole month just writing the outline and doing all that research ahead of time, then filling in the stories. I did not do that. I did a very helter skelter. I started with the story and then I followed it. I just sort of let it guide me. And then I would go watch an episode of Buffy. I would go look at some, picture books and remember, what was going on at that time, do some other research for the songs. And I just let my creativity guide me through the book. And I ended up with way more material than I knew what I wanted to use. And then I edited back and created the outline and the summary after I kind of had at least the general themes that were popping out and making sure the book was heading in some specific direction for my poor readers.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. I know both people who plan and people who fly by the seat of their pants. And what the pantsters often say is, I kind of wish I was a planner, because what I do is I have all this material and then it's hard work to go back and organize it. But at the same time, what I see with planners sometimes is they plan and then they get stuck in the plan. Right? I'm supposed to write this section next and I can't think of what to say. And so I'll be stuck for a week, right? Rather than jumping around. And so I can, I see the benefits of both, and I can see how both can cause can cause dismay at times as well. Where can we find your book?
So, I Laugh in the Face of Danger is available on Amazon in paperback, ebook, and my lovely voice on Audible. We are in the process of, we just heard Spotify launching their audiobook section. So, we are in the process of figuring out how that works. And so, the audio version will be available on there too. But as we get ready to launch some new projects, we'll be expanding probably to small bookstores and libraries and a bunch of other fun places. But yeah, start with Amazon.
Sounds great. And if you want to learn more about Nikki herself, you can go to thenikkigreen.com. That is her website. And you will find lots of goodies there as well. And I want to talk about one of those goodies in a bit. But first, I want to ask you that you're really busy. You've got your book, you've got your podcast. What projects are you working on right now that are exciting and fun, and you want to maybe tell us about?
Well, for anyone who's on the live and can see the video, there's a very secret package here sitting on my desk, and that is my second book, which is coming out soon, called Chameleon Mindset, and it's how to adapt to change in times of chaos. So as we kind of talked a little bit about with my first book, that has pretty much been the experience of my life. And so I decided to make a super fun book full of Easter eggs and pop culture references to get you in the mood to really learn how to create your own syllabus for life. So secret reveal, it's not ready yet, but we're getting there close.
Yeah. So the first book, Memoir, that's your life story. And the second book is really about picking out those life lessons and creating a how-to, the how to apply this to your life so you can be a successful chameleon as well. Is that a good description of the book?
Yeah, well, I would be remiss if I didn't at least include some stories of my life to keep people entertained.
Yes.
In my first book, I talk about my first concussion. And so in my second book, I talk about my second concussion. So there'll be lots of good stories that'll go along with the lessons. So again, there's relatable, fun things to sort of make you laugh, maybe make you cry, and make you think about things that are going on in your life that may have paralleled.
Yeah, yeah. And I'd like to talk about change for a minute, because, authors writing a book, this is a huge change, right? Going from, I have this idea, to writing 50,000, 60,000, 70,000 words, editing it back down to 50,000 words, all of this stuff. This is a huge change. What is some advice from you for people who are about to enter this transition from, I have an idea, to I'm going to be a successful author?
Yeah, I think, I always tell people, make sure you go big first, right? What's the goal? You want to write a book, just any book? Do you care if people read it? Do you want it to be successful? What does success mean to you? But then I say to go small. really think about just taking it one day at a time, enjoy the experience, because it is an experience to write, to be creative. Not just for writers, but people that paint. There's so many people in this creator economy now. Enjoy the experience because it is a bit of a roller coaster as you go through it, no matter what you're writing. If you're writing fiction or nonfiction, it really doesn't matter. The experience is very similar because you're putting yourself into it. You're really putting yourself on a page, whether that's a true story of your life or whether that's just your imagination and your either desire for an experience or something that inspired you. So enjoy the journey, take it with a grain of salt because there will be tough days when maybe you don't want to write or you're feeling a bit blocked. But yeah, just go small and you'll get to that big goal.
Yeah. So the two things that you do really well, and I'm sure you do lots of things well, but the two that I want to talk about at the moment are the syllabus for life and the ability to deal with change. How do those two connect?
Yeah. So when you get a syllabus in class, one of the things that helps you is you kind of know what's coming, right? You know what book you're supposed to be reading, you know when class is, you know what chapters you're supposed to be finishing, and when the exam is going to be, and when you're done, and when you can move on to the next thing. Life doesn't quite work like that. But you know, in general, that there will be what I call exams in your life, those milestones that you're trying to hit. And so that's where the syllabus comes as your baseline. But then life does what life does. It changes and it happens. And sometimes those are life changes you choose. You choose a new partner, a new place to live, a new job, right? Any one of those things you're choosing, which are still stressful, or sometimes things happen to you. You lose your job, you lose your partner, you lose a family member. We have a pandemic. And so then the change and adaptation part comes to, okay, now let's sit down and reevaluate that syllabus and what is serving us right now and what is not. And how do we keep making that next plan, to adapt the syllabus? It's not set in stone, and you're only going to find happiness if you continue to pursue that next thing and you're adapting to some of those challenges as best we can.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. As an entrepreneur, one of the things that I've noticed in talking about success, right? When you're just starting out, what is success? Okay, you're thinking about my syllabus, right? The end goal is this. But when you get there, the goalpost tends to move on you, right? I don't know about you, but it's like, I'm here now. Oh, wait, no, the goalpost is over there. All of a sudden, my mind has put it over there. And so, and what we don't do is we don't stop to celebrate that, like, we actually completed this syllabus, and we should
Mhm.
celebrate that before we move the goalpost. And that's something I know I've worked on over my lifetime. So I love the idea of like a syllabus having like an end goal, an outcome. Not that you can't, go do postgraduate and have a new syllabus. It's just that you get to stop and admire the work that you've done up to now. So thank you for that analogy. I really appreciate that. And that things change, right? Things change as you're trying to make your way through the syllabus. Things change, right? Um,
Mhm.
so tell us a little bit about your work with change. And I know you have a quiz that you do that I've taken. And so if maybe you could tell the audience a little bit about this.
Yeah, as we're prepping to launch the new book, Chameleon Mindset, we started talking about, well, how could people even know, where they're stuck? And people are stuck in different areas. But Chameleon Mindset has sort of 5 main philosophies that it leans on, which are not completely foreign. There's lots of information about each of these individual ones. But what I do is kind of pull them together into one overarching idea. And so by taking the quick quiz, it's only about 60 seconds. It gives you at least a baseline of where you see your biggest challenge. You may, have challenges in all those areas, but where do you focus, right? Again, even if you have a big goal, let's start small. Let's start with one thing to work on of the 5 and figure out where you need to maybe push yourself and start setting some mini goals within that to get forward in that progress.
Yeah, I really like that. As I was a gymnast, and the goal is to be an Olympian, right? But you have to have these goals along the way because you just can't have that one big goal. That's not realistic. And then there's those tiny little actions you take in the gym to get to the goals, right? So I really like that. and being a chameleon and changing as you go is part of it. So thank you very much. Nikki has a quiz, the chameleon quiz. I have popped the link in the description. I suggest you go take it. I've taken it. It's a lot of fun, and you'll learn something about yourself. Where can people get in touch with you, Nikki?
Well, you can go to thenikkigreen.com or thenikkigreen360.com. There you'll find my website, my podcast, social media. I'm dancing on TikTok. I'm sharing my adventures in writing and running on Instagram. So lots of fun places. I'm usually pretty much, people feel like they know me by the time they actually meet me because I'm all over the place. And I will be going on tour soon with the new book in the next year. So hopefully I'll get to actually meet some people IRL in real life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love your TikTok, by the way. It's another thing. The link to your TikTok is in the description. So if people are interested in Nikki's TikTok, go check it out there. Thank you very much, Nikki, for coming today and talking about your book and life syllabus and big changes, which is just part of today's world. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It was great being on.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right. Thank you for joining us today. Author Nation is here to provide you with a path to having a published book. So join us and meet like-minded people like you who have something to say, have a way you want to change the world, and you want to write a book and get it out there. You can join us at Author Nation. Oh, not at authornationtube.com. Ignore what's scrolling past you right now. It's authornation.community, and the link will be in the description. Thank you very much for joining us, and I will see you next week. We'll be talking to Pauline Wiles, and she'll be talking about your website as a 24-hour employee.